Hello.
Hello,
Yay.
hello.
Good to see you. Mm, mm, mm,
Hope everybody's doing well out there. Mm, Good to see you.
mm. Might look at the other page just to say hi. Hello. Mm, mm. So let's get going. Sometimes it's helpful to find an attunement. It's like finding a radio station. It's an attunement to karuna or compassion. Just simply connecting with any pain in your body, mind, heart, and caring about it. But it can feel more like kindness or just a quiet connection. It's not trying to make anything intense happen, but it's that finding the attunement that matters. We all have different entry points into this very light care, gentle, kind care. And often, just as we do with hearing, it can be an opening up of the attention, sometimes very wide around our body, not necessarily around the skin, but more open around the body. So it's just allowing, accepting attention of the pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feeling tones coming and going in our bodies, in our hearts. And of course, this includes equanimity, just that allowing things to be just as they are with this kind, caring attention. Not having to get rid of or get. It's including any painful areas, but acknowledging any neutral or pleasant areas of our bodies, hearts, mind. And just noticing if there's a ease or relief of finding this attunement with kindness and care. And noticing if you're receiving it. Sometimes there's a shift into abiding in the kindness and care, but often there is a sense of a sending and receiving. You might forget to let the kindness and care seep in, trickle in to our bodies. Caring about what's important. And when we shift to the sixth sense star, moment to moment awareness, often we're beginning with this an ease of well-being, more neutral. So we shift to hearing with the ease of a more open field of awareness. Receiving sounds, just like listening to music or an orchestra. Noticing the sounds come and go just as they are. Again, with this relief of not having to control, manipulate, fix, get rid of. Or shifting from maybe being very involved in the concepts of what's causing sounds to just, again, that relief of just receiving textures, vibration. Unknown. Everything that appears is new for the first time. We've never been with this particular silence or sounds. And it won't happen again. Never again this moment. We shift into our hands. At first, the visual image, the memory might appear or often appear. It's okay. Just thinking. Just notice that come and go. And see if you can be with the sensations. Always new, moment to moment. Textures, just like sound. Alive, changing. Receiving through the direct experience, not through the thought process. And with the movement of the breath at the abdomen, and it's easy for the visual image to appear, but it will disappear. We don't have to struggle with the visual images. They come and go. And just being with or receiving even half of the rising movement is a huge achievement. The end of the falling movement till it disappears. And finding this ease of well-being. Is so important, even for half of a breath. And whether it's with our sounds, the sounds, or hands, breath, whatever is easiest. It's finding this place of ease, of understanding. We don't have to manipulate, control, fix, or get rid of. So whatever appears at moment to moment flow, stream of change, thoughts, sounds, body sensation, thoughts, emotion, smells, sights, taste. Amazing aliveness. Just like flowing water. Our hearts serene on flowing water. If we get caught, stuck, identify and bring great compassion, kindness, and anchoring ease. With whatever's appearing, or anchoring with whatever's appearing.
think we have to test our bells with our new microphone. Mm. Thank you, Michelle.
Mhm.
Mm.
Does everybody hear the same thing? Is that a koan?
So Michelle and I thought it would be a good day to take some questions if anybody had any about your practice, about things we might be able to support you with, um, things, interesting things, challenges, questions about our instructions or offerings, whatever way we might be able to support. And the best way to let us know that you have a question, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a little raise hand button. You can click on that and we'll see that you have a question. If that doesn't work, you can type into the chat that you have a question and we'll call on you. Wave your hands around and we'll see that. Hi, Julie.
I'm just getting to the point in my, kind of funny to say this after trying to practice for quite a long time. But I'm just getting to the point where I'm really looking forward to finally sitting down and getting quiet, and just feels like life is kind of a constant. It's like everybody's got all these perspectives and everybody's trying to find the way in this mirage of contesting perspectives, or and like I'm trying to figure out how to be mm, yeah, I'm not sure what I'm even asking. It's kind of like it's such a contrast, like it's like this, this kind of like the peace isn't there in the everyday life so much, except like the sitting down, finally getting quiet and being um, finding care. And I'm just wondering if that's normal to find it's such a contrast in the world today and in my life, I guess. It's kind of it.
Yeah, great, important question. I guess I'm sure we'll both have a little to say. I mean, off just the sort of my initial kind of resonance with it is, this sort of interesting aspect of the Buddhist teachings and of the tradition around the questions of view. That on one hand, there is this understanding and encouragement that there is something called right view, that there is a correct perspective uh, that is in alignment with things as they really are, and that is not rooted in delusion or greed or hatred. And so that there is a kind of landing on that. And on the other side, there is also this understanding that views on their own, or views in general, are a big part of what causes a lot of suffering and attachment to views and belief in views and identification with views and insistence on views. And it's the cause of a lot of turmoil and between people and in society, and also in our own more internal or sort of spiritual and experience. And so there is on one hand this understanding that actually letting go of views and being very suspicious of our attachment to them and our belief in them and our sense of rightness and righteousness and how much harm can come from that. And and then on the other hand, a sense that it's also important to see that there are views that don't lead to harm and don't lead to conflict um, and that don't lead to confusion, and that those things are important. And so I think that part of what I hear you pointing to is just that so much in our world, and I think it's like this kind of dance between these things that have always been true, and that there's some unique elements to the time we're living in around how contested what's true is, as you're saying, right? And between various factions of society, but also that there are now like non-sentient organisms that are involved in the process of propagating truths or untruths, or there's like these levels of it that are very confusing, um, and so there is a way in which I think that sensitivity that you're describing to how view and is such a part of what's so taxing about how we think about the world and how we're interpreting our lives and the world and society. So much about kind of conflict with other people or conflict in the world outside of ourselves, and that there's something taxing about that. And there's something, and yet there's an ambivalence about like just letting it go either, right? That we also have an understanding that there are views that lead to harm, and that there are views that lead to behaviors that are generous and kind and connected with compassion and wisdom, and that's also true, but that you're finding a place of, or seeking, or inclining toward that kind of space of more refuge around something that's different, right? An experience of quietude, experience of compassion or kindness that isn't necessarily based on a perspective or an analysis or a view. And that might be something that comes more out of what you would think in the realm of understanding in the Vipassana sense. Again, not necessarily in the intellectual sense, but some deeper sort of understanding of deeper truths that are wholesome and beautiful and nourishing and feel safer and more stable, perhaps, than the sort of realm of contested views that we find ourselves in a lot of the time in the world, or social media or, whatever relationships, that we might encounter. So I just, if that feels like it has something to do with what you're saying, I guess it's more just a sense of acknowledgement that it's hard, and it's hard to manage. I think, of course, we would say that it's really beautiful that you're feeling called to the inner, like that sense of where you might feel more confidence in a connection with certain truths and something that feels good for you. And I think the more time we spend in that space and kind of affirming that and finding our way to that does inform our relationship to the other kind of views and the sort of uh, relationship of how much of the sort of currency of relationship is rooted in this and these perspectives, and who are our friends and who are our enemies, and do we think things are going the right way or the wrong way, and how much gets built on that sense of our views, and how unstable that can feel is important and challenging. And I'd say my sense is like the most important thing is knowing that that's a ongoing process of kind of purification and identification and release, and that has to be rooted in the practice that you're describing, that you're wanting more of. So it seems like a good inclination.
So in other words, becoming more aware of just the, all the contestants, and the contesting views, and it's below that. It's more like just trying to find a way to just be with it without reacting, without, just an example of we got into this political discussion. There's this election coming up in Canada tomorrow. And so there's, some pretty strong views on both sides. And this conversation was going, and I finally just said, I can't even go there with this. Like, I can't even talk about this. Like, I could feel my whole, like, I don't know, the confusion coming up, and it's like not where I want to be. I don't want to be in the middle of this morass of kind of like, so I'm trying to find some right ways of perceiving, hopefully some right people. But like getting into these personal discussions about it gets so inflamed. And, when I said that, there was this huge silence for a while, and then we kind of found, a safe topic to talk about. And it's ridiculous.
Fear and fear of those around.
Is my voice hearing?
Yes,
Can you hear it? Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would just add into it that I think it often starts with us having some spaciousness with our own views. And that's why everything Jesse said, it's like you incline toward the quiet, because it's important to include our own views in views, meaning you can see when you sit, like even once a day, like how hard it is to get so that you're not caught in thought, right? Like, so that whole sense of concept, I heard the word concept differently recently. I heard con, like being conned, with concept, like concept and reality. So that whole sense when we do the instructions with the Vipassana, and that you're doing everything you can to start the sitting, to start not being caught in the concept of what's happening, because it's based on memory. So view is based on memory, right? And so the whole sense of being conned by our own views that are just based on conditioning, and getting some semblance of solitude, like samadhi, concentration is solitude. It's not getting pulled by all the different ways that we believe a thought and thought patterns and not believe others, and just getting that quiet, like that's neutral. It's the neutral. It's going into the safe harbor, versus lost at sea with all the views versus quiet. That's the only way you can even see the morass clearly, is by seeing your own morass clearly, right? And then kind of, I think it's a wonderful sign you don't want to get caught up in it, because it doesn't usually help when it's just like a ricocheting, and it has no solid kind of base in quiet and not being identified.
Yeah. I kind of wonder whether I'm just too sensitive sometimes, or, like it's like I'm becoming more aware of it. So I'm becoming more alert to it. So I could become more reactive, but I'm
I think that's the price you pay for getting quiet, is that you tend to get more that it's hard to find a word that doesn't have a view on it, right? Like, so the word sensitivity, if it's like a pure, like ear door sensitivity, eye door sensitivity, mind door, heart door sensitivity, body sensitivity, yeah, as you get quiet, that the sensitivity is actually just you're more aware of your aliveness and what we're born into as a human. That's the sensitivity, that if a human being is caught up in thought so much that they're not aware of the other 99% of what's going on, then when you yourself get out of that and you're in the 99% of the sixth sense or sensitivity, and you're not lost in identification with views, it will seem like you might be more reactive. But I think that's like stages of practice where it takes time for equanimity to catch up.
Mm.
It takes time for equanimity to catch up to how quiet we get, and that's like a process where often the most important part of that is that you understand that as you get quieter and you're with people that are not that quiet, then you will often feel more sensitive. But it's really just that you have to find a way to get more equanimous and compassionate with how you're going in a certain direction. That is, it's an important direction. I hope that's clear enough. Maybe Jesse can add more into that, but
No, it's all giving me some food for, yeah, it's clearing things more, like there's the whole world of all the views, and then the sort of mind going on about it, and then there's the sitting quiet, and even like there's one person who is very quiet, and I find, I talk too much, and I'm going like, it's like, I mean, like there's people that, anyway, it's
it's a lot. It's yeah, it's like every being we're with is different,
Mhm.
including animals and plants. Like it's like one is in that alive. It's part of the aliveness.
Yeah, maybe that's why I like being with animals so much.
It's quieter.
Yeah, they're quieter. They're just like that, they look at you and they just see themselves.
Some of
I
them.
have no idea what my cat is thinking. It's great. I can't figure it out.
Yeah, and there's no way you can convince or whatever, right? Sure.
Right.
Or con. Right.
I think I just want to just say something too about there's the just, this important thing of like, okay, are you where do you put yourself in the conditions, the social conditions under which, there's going to be more of that type of experience? Where are you finding seclusion and supporting yourself in the way that feels like, is cultivating the access to what you get in the quietude and the solitude? And so that's always, of course, important. We're very, of course, we encourage like going on retreat and practicing and, understanding that it gives us, it nourishes us in a way that's hard to find outside of that. And sometimes it's amazing to see how much of that we need. What really would be a balance, quote unquote, for us is, a range. But I think it's hard to see actually how much quietude we might need in order to feel like we can engage in a way that's maintain some level of balance, or is stretching us in ways that are at least manageable, and at the same time, it is part of I believe, the kind of important spiritual work of the time. Also, it has to do with how do we relate to conflict, and that there are ways of taking responsibility for our own tendencies and our own limitations in these types of moments. That's also important, and is not just, sometimes it is about being like, okay, we need to just like turn the temperature down and, you know, mm, ground things in a way that they're, not bubbling over and creating more conflict and animosity, enmity, all these things, right? And um, there has to, we should be careful about just the very basic, like, notion of aversion in ourselves of like, I don't like how I'm feeling, right? Whether that's with the physical pain or emotional discomfort in a group of people that are having a conflict, and to take responsibility for what is just aversion to a certain sensation as well, and to not feel like that is always a truth that everyone else needs to be subject to either, right? That like we ourselves might feel discomfort, we might not feel at ease in a certain moment, and that our aversion to how we're feeling shouldn't necessarily either be the determining factor for what is communicated, or the nature of any sort of experience. So it's one of these things where it's like, again, it's like that part of taking our own, where do we feel discomfort and conflict, and where is there part of that that's very sane and very healthy, and like we want to feel kindness and we want to feel caring and we want other people to share those feelings, and that there is also probably there is a way to sometimes get underneath the views that we can sort of get stuck in, like, well, this person believes that and this person believes that, and there's like this tension, and you're in the room, or you yourself believe something and someone else is really attached to a different view. Sometimes it's like not worrying so much about the views and the places of their conflict, or alignment, but actually attuning to the emotional undercurrent for ourselves and for others, right? That's happening. That like you, someone may be very identified with the view and very passionate about it, and rather than sort of dismiss them because of something that we might say, well, they're very attached to their views, it's to understand that often it's coming from a place of like anxiety or deep concern. It's coming maybe from a place of care that feels threatened, or there's there's worry, right? There's something emotionally sort of unstable, right? That or that people feel very impassioned about things because they feel important, right? And that there might be some place of starting to attune, kind of getting underneath the rightness or wrongness of various views and be able to attune to what is the sort of like emotional undercurrent of the people that you're sitting with and conversing with. And then of course for ourselves too, right? Is it like actually is our own anxiety about the conflict something that is the responsibility of others or not, right? Or how do I sort of attune to like, wow, it is rooted in a deeper ethic and um, concern of mine, and that getting to that place of caring and the deeper kind of kernel of wholesome motivation for ourselves and for other people that we might be in the room with can be an important way of making it through conflict. It doesn't necessarily mean we come to agreement, doesn't mean that we get over a distinction of views that might be important on some level of reality, but that we don't lose a sense of the humanity of ourselves or others in points of conflict that are very important and meaningful, and that it is that loss of valuing another person's heart, right, and or
Mm.
our own, that is the source of so much violence and so much um, illness, in our society and in the world. That we also have responsibility for kind of going deeper than that, in all of these conversations.
Yeah, I'm just realizing something about that, how like the temperature's getting higher, right? With the conflicting stuff. And I'm like with this one person that I had the conflict with, well, I don't call it a conflict really. I've listened to her differing views in a much different state of mind than this last time. I was like, I would be open to just, oh yeah, okay, I hear what you're trying to say, like I don't quite get it, but that kind of much more conciliatory kind of. Um, and so this is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 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 and it's very helpful to understand like the whole thing about pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And I'm learning a lot about that right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because it can seem so abstract and like we're like, what does Vedana have to do with like the world we're living in? And it's like, no, right, exactly, it does. And it's such a neat way to sort of see how like the details and the subtlety of the teachings actually are even more important as the temperature goes up,
Yeah, yeah. Because then,
metaphorically and
mhm,
in reality.
great. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
This
I
is
was going to just add one other thing, which is I think this is such an important question, and it's around what you said around getting quiet and then maybe feeling more reactivity. And I'm trying to bring all the threads into what everyone said so far, and that we have to be careful of making an assessment of our practice if we're moving out of the quiet and we feel we think we're feeling more reactive, but we might be just merely more aware of the reactivity than we would have if we weren't quiet. And I hope that
Mhm.
is I hope this is very clear, because I think that's what happens most of the time, is that we might we might notice this amazing aversion that comes up in relationship that we didn't even notice Vedana. We didn't even notice, and now that if we weren't quiet, we wouldn't have been noticing the aversion, and we might have a chance to actually include our being aware of our own aversion and noticing it come and go and not get conned again, not get conned. And therefore, if we can do that with our own aversion, we might not get conned by somebody else's aversion, right? We start becoming aware of the reactivity in others and ourselves, rather than feeling like something's wrong with conflict or something's wrong about it, then really just including it in our practice. I don't think we stand a chance to do that without getting quiet. And I don't think we stand a chance to do it without realizing that that's part of the equation, that we will get more aware of our own and others' reactivity, more sensitive to it. And it requires more practice. Like, it's cool. It's really cool, because this is how peace happens. Peace doesn't come from getting rid of all of this. It comes from getting enough quiet to be able to keep seeing how to navigate through it and keep navigating through it. So I think this is a wonderful, really wonderful question. Really.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is great. And it's good that it's recorded too. Like, I listened to the, the after the YouTube views, and then you can kind of get more clarity when you listen to it again. So appreciate this muchly. Very much. It's really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Richard.
Hi, Richard.
How you doing? This is a basic question, is that, I find the directions of relaxing and being aware as pretty easy and non-stressful. Whereas whenever I try to follow my breath, for example, I could count and keep track, or I could note the beginning in breath and out breath and all that sort of stuff. But it really feels like work. It feels a lot more of a strain. And so I know it's easier to do the thing that's easier, but am I missing something by following my breath strain, a big strain?
I answered that beginning. I don't know if approaching this is like something's wrong with something being more work, but I do think that it's more about understanding, finding easy anchors, so that like for everybody, being with things as they are really is often not easy. I mean, it's just like, that's what the Buddha taught. Like the greed, hatred, and delusion, they get more visible as you try to pay attention to how things really are. So the idea of how Vipassana, I think, is meant to be taught is that you have to find anchors for your attention that are easier, because otherwise you don't even want to do it. It's just too hard. So like, for example, offering sound as an anchor, or hands as an anchor, or breath as an anchor, the idea is that hopefully you find one of those that's easier. And if some people might find starting with loving kindness easier, we're trying to encourage people to find a way to invite one's attention to want to try to understand what's happening. It's an invitation, and that no matter what happens, something is going to be hard, or you'd be fully enlightened, right? So it's not necessarily that you want to do a forced march through the breath at all. In fact, if it's really hard, we would say, if, as you're doing the sixth sense door awareness, if the breath appears, versus directing your attention to the breath, that might be a better way to go.
Well, I'll try to find something that works, and it is.
Well, it's really working is also when we say something's working, there are many ways to approach what you're saying, because it's not only that you take the idea is that from what you're saying, I'm trying to take the pressure off. You take the pressure off because there's no need for that pressure, and there's no need for you to have the breath as an anchor. There are plenty of other anchors. So then you take that pressure off. But the breath will appear sometimes, and then you can be with it like that, right? Or you can also sometimes, if you want to direct it there, I really mean it, try half a rising movement.
I'm sorry, half a what?
Half a breath, not even a whole in breath or a whole rising movement. Take half. And if that's too hard, you take a quarter and then you let it be. You don't try it again, maybe for 10 more sittings. So you're always trying to find, that's what I would say works, is finding the amount that you can be with. It would be the same as if somebody was asking about terror or rage, right? That usually requires some work, right? It's hard. And so it's like getting that it's not the terror rage, it's the resistance to it. But you want to take a homeopathic dose. You want to take a dose that you could go, oh, oh boy, my good friend terror. I was hoping terror would come. Well, for you, it could be, oh boy, my good friend the breath. I was hoping I could be with, like, try to be with you for like a few seconds. Do you see?
Oh, a few seconds is, I guess I'm part of, I guess I'm being lazy about a distracted mind and not wanting to do the work of coming back. But
Well, welcome to the club.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, right?
yeah,
The idea is that you cannot control if the mind goes off.
yeah.
You absolutely cannot control that. Yep, you're right. But you can, when that moment that you notice it, the whole thing is that what are you going to come back to?
Mm. So
And
there
if
isn't
you're
just a pill I could take and be done with it.
Maybe in
only,
California.
maybe only a lobotomy would be permanent. Yeah, only a lobotomy. But I think that you just don't want to make it too hard. And I don't know if you're being lazy. I think it's more, what are you choosing to come back to? And there is a choice about that. You can train the attention to come back where it's easier for you.
Okay.
And then the idea is that when you do that, that's strengthening. The idea is to strengthen, 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 so that when you do have something that's hard, you have enough wherewithal to only do it a little bit. So you're not doing the forced march and getting more and more dragged down. You're trying to prevent the war between effort and so-called effort and laziness versus simply being with what is. It's a fake battle.
Hmm.
We create the battle and we're trying to find peace. So the idea is that you find more and more peace in what you come back to, so that you can go. The war is greed, hatred, and delusion. See, you're trying to find a way to see that. It's to see it clearly enough. It's just endless, finding enough spaciousness to see clearly where we're getting caught in an imaginary war.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Oh, you
I'll
need,
just, I,
I'll just say it, you need humor, Richard, for sure.
I think I just want to amplify some of the things Michele said. It's just that there are lineages and traditions in our world where there are going to be two extremely different answers to that, right? One side of things where it's like you follow the rising and falling of the abdomen at the breath forever, like that, like don't think about it, don't ask questions, don't like, you do that until it all comes to an end, period, right? Where it's like that's the training, and there's an incredible amount of concentration that develops in that, and that is important for insight, right? On that I'll say something about on another level. And there are lineages where there's just like sit back and just watch and just hang out, and the mind will kind of like wander, and once in a while it'll show back up, and it'll wander and it'll show back up, and that you're cultivating more the mindfulness side of things, perhaps more than the concentration. And I think we just feel that there are really beautiful and important things kind of on both of those ends of the spectrum. There are going to be those of us who are more inclined towards one or other side of that spectrum, that they don't need to be seen as a polarity like against one another, but there are these points of like, what decision, what do I do now with the attention? And there are going to be shadow sides to either way. There's going to be things that are harder to cultivate on one side than the other. And I think we both just really feel like it's so important for people to want to practice. And if the more relaxed, restful, easy side of things is part of what makes you feel like you want to sit there and come back to that, versus like it's going to be just like push, force, effort. And it's like Michele will say often, it's like, if that's going to be what you're coming back to, why your mind isn't going to want to come back to that if it feels very violent, or exhausting. So there is that sense of like, and then there's other people where it doesn't feel violent. It feels like invigorating, and it's like, it's a whatever. There's a healthy version of doing, really more just like investigative in that way, right? But if it feels like your inclination and what feels like refuge to you on some level in your practice is the more restful side of things, to not feel like we want to take that away. And that there are times where when you are aware of the body is the kind of Michele's saying, it's like, do you spend a few moments maintaining that sort of connection in a momentary way of something, whether it's the breath, the body, the hand, sound, it doesn't matter really what it is. It's more sort of like there's a little bit of sense when the mind drops into something that you hang out there and watch it in a momentary way for a few moments. And then you don't have to maintain that sort of discipline all of the time, but that will build something that's important over time. And that if that starts to feel safe and engaging in a way that's meaningful, that will start to become part of the habit of the mind that feels good and feels not just like work, but like a calling, and that we're going to all find our ways differently, in this. There isn't just the standard approach, and that we do feel like it's important to be flexible in terms of method. And just as Michele was saying, insight in terms of the Vipassana classic, like what is actually going to lead to the liberation of mind and the unbinding from delusion, that does require a very powerful coming together of both the forces of concentration and of mindfulness, and of other things, equanimity, and other things that you're cultivating. You might call it lazy, but you might be cultivating equanimity, right? You could think of it that way, right? Or a gentleness, or just an ease of mind. So be careful about dismissing what you're cultivating in a non-forceful way, because there might be something actually very important there. And there are a lot of things to cultivate. And that ultimately being able to actually watch phenomena arise and pass in a discrete way, right? And to see and understand that the nature of all things is that impermanent, and things are that unstable, and that's what's hard about existence. And attachment to any of these things causes suffering, and that even ourselves, what we think of as ourselves, is also made up of these conditioned moments that aren't any more coherent or substantial than that. those are the mechanisms of liberation in the Buddhist sense, in the Theravadan Buddhist sense, and that those do require these mental skills, that we're developing over time. And so it's like that palette of what we're building and what we're training in and is a wide palette, and that there are a number of things to build. And it's good to have a sense of where we see our strengths and where we see the things we haven't developed as much. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to really also just trust and listen to what feels natural, what feels strengthening, what feels like is part of a natural capacity of yours, and then bring in the things that are harder, because it's also a training, and that's important, but to do it carefully, as Michelle's describing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Really good question. Mm-hmm.
I think since there isn't another question, I would also add into that the reason it's hard to be with things as they are is because of anicca, dukkha, anatta, right? So that, again, that question of right effort and just kind of understanding, I think that what over years of sitting 3-month retreats with Sayadaw U Pandita, and he was very hard on me, was that there was a kind of relentlessness of teaching that he did with me in individual interviews, which was that anything can happen. And that's what we do. That's what's hard about being here, is that anything can happen. Any thought can appear. Any range of any kind of thought can appear. Any kind of sound, sight, smell, taste, touch, right body, anything can happen. And just that way in which we want to control that. So that no matter what you're paying attention to, no matter what you bring your attention to, that ultimately that's what why the mind wanders. The mind does not want to be with that. So it's like, no matter where, that ability to kind of connect and sustain a bit is all about, of course it's because of impermanence that we don't know what's going to happen next, right? And so, and then it's not personal. However this unfolds isn't personal. And so there's that sense of like, I really believe in making it inviting enough to want to understand that and to get strong enough. It's about getting strong enough to be with that, so that we're not surprised. Like, look at how things are right now. And a lot of it is that we just don't think it should be happening the way it is, but it is, right? It shouldn't be, right? But it is, but actually it is. And so, this is, I got a big dose of this with U Pandita. It's being strong enough to be with things as they are, meaning this is not easy because of anicca, dukkha, anatta. Dukkha being that we cannot control what's that, it's like it's things. Anything can happen, and anything can happen with pleasure, right? It can be pleasant, it can be neutral, it can be unpleasant. So I just wanted to add that in because I think it's so critical actually to what you're asking. It's why the mind goes off. It's not just about being lazy. If only it was a matter of discipline.
Thanks, Richard. David, let's see. Can you unmute there?
Thanks. I have a little request, not just for you, Michele and Jesse, but anyone in the Sangha. I'm married to an immigrant, to a woman from Uganda. Yeah, our life, even though I was not very hip, our lives look like a study of DEI. But in 2 weeks, we have an interview with Customs and Immigration. Our job is to prove that we have a valid marriage. Their job is to prove we don't. It's all kind of crazy making. But I'm just hoping that anyone who's interested would hold this in their heart and thoughts and prayers in that this is coming up in 2 weeks. Thanks.
Yeah, David, is there anything more like material than that? I mean, I don't know if there's any, I mean, not that we know your wife or your relationship really here, but is there, in terms of, I don't know exactly what I mean, I have some sense of what the process is, but in terms of supportive gestures or letters or.
Well, thank you for offering. Yeah, I don't know. A letter is probably couldn't hurt, but it's kind of far along. It would feel better if things were different, but they are exactly how they are. And this is not a friendly administration to immigrants. Yeah.
Do you have a lawyer that's working with you, that's helping you kind of manage the process?
Yes, we have an immigration attorney, and she's very good. She, what do I know? But she seems good. I'm confident in what she can do.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all can certainly send so much loving kindness and compassion, equanimity. But you could probably give us the date that might help.
It's 2 weeks from tomorrow, so May 12th.
Okay. Yeah.
And if your attorney can think of anything that would be just, I don't know, whatever kind of community support that would be helpful. So there is another Sunday beforehand, right? So if in this next week there was, if there was anything kind of more concrete that Michele or I or the larger community might be able to do to help, ask the lawyer and see what she thinks, and if there is something we can do, or of course we can ruminate on ourselves as well. But thank you for letting us know, and of course,
Thank you so much. I'll ask her tomorrow.
Yeah, please do. That goes for anyone, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, we're very sorry that it's happening. I mean, this is why we are referring over and over again to hard times. It's hard times for so many people. So we're sorry.
Thanks.
Anything can happen, as Michele said. Yeah. And that goes for, all sides of these dynamics. So it is amazing what people are able to do and coming together and being supportive. So David, remind me just what state you're in. Are you in Colorado?
Arizona.
Arizona.
Okay.
Arizona. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. So yeah, keep us posted.
Will do. Thanks for your
Mhm.
support.
Of course. Yeah. All right, everyone. Take care. Yeah. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you next week.